Hello and welcome to the 10th video in this beginner's guide to Adobe After Effects. In this tutorial, I'm going to demonstrate how you can add easing to your keyframes in After Effects.
So in a previous episode, we learned how to create a simple animation using keyframes. In this video, I'll be showing you how to add smoothness to your animations by using easing. So in this video, we're going to be covering the following topics. What is easing? Applying easing, different types of easing, and using the right kind of easing. After this video, you will understand how to apply easing to keyframes to animate. So let's get into it.
So here I am in After Effects where we left off in the previous episode. In that episode, we created a simple animation of a circle moving from point A to point B, changing scale and opacity in between. Now looking at our animation in preview mode, it looks great, but there is something rigid and plain about the movement. If we look at the animation I previewed at the start of the previous video, we can see it moves more smoothly and with more flow. Now this is because we have easing applied to the keyframes. And if we look in the timeline panel, we can see the keyframes are different from the ones we just applied to our animation. These keyframes have different shapes applied. In After Effects, this is called easing. So what is easing? Well, in principle, easing adds smooth momentum between keyframe points, which in turn adds smoothness to our sequences. So let's see how this works in practice. So to help explain easing, I'll open a quick demonstration document I have put together. Now, I recommend you look at this because this is really going to help you. So with the project folder open, click into the S2 Essential Practice folder, into the 10th folder, Easing, and open the Yo-Yo Demo After Effects file. And you will have the same document I have open here. Now, if you've not yet downloaded the project folder and you want to follow along and take a closer look at this demo, you will need to download the project folder first. You can download the project folder for a small fee. The download link with instructions is in the description. The download folder comes with lots of exercise documents we will be using on this course that have been carefully developed to aid your learning experience. The folder also comes with document resources such as videos, graphics, and images you can use to build your first video presentation from scratch later on in this course. To get the full learning experience, I recommend you get the project folder. Download link with instructions is in the description. So with the project folder open, click into the S2 Essential Practice folder, into the 10th folder, Easing, and open the Yo-Yo Demo After Effects file. And you'll have the same document I have open here. If I hit spacebar to preview, we can see the yo-yo animations. Now it's important to mention here that these animations are all exactly the same. However, they move differently. This is because they have different easing effects applied. Below each animation here is a little diagram for reference, showing you the easing that has been applied to each animation above. The lines show the smooth effect caused by the easing. So looking at the first yo-yo, we can see it moves quite rigidly from top to bottom, with quite an abrupt shift at each end. The momentum here is pretty consistent. Now looking at the second yo-yo, we can see it's a bit more smoother when it falls. The momentum seems to slow as it reaches the bottom, and then it snaps back at the top. Now looking at the third yo-yo, we can see it's even more smoother when it falls and when it reaches the top. The momentum slows as it reaches the bottom, then speeds up and slows again as it reaches the top, creating a continuous, smooth action with a nice swing at each end. So now I want to draw your attention to the timeline panel. Looking in the panel, we can see that each layer has the same amount of keyframes applied, but have some different shapes. In After Effects, there is a variety of keyframes you can apply to create various movement and smoothness effects. And if we look carefully, we can see the keyframes below are matching the keyframes in the diagram just under each yo-yo animation. Now, let's take a quick look at keyframe types. So these are the common keyframe shapes you will encounter when applying easing to your keyframes. At this stage, it will help to recognize the shapes and what they do. If you'd like to take your time to look over these keyframes, you can also look at the keyframe page on the PDF course document that accompanies this course. This document has been prepared to help you and accompany your learning experience. This can be downloaded for free, the link is in the description. So here we have the first keyframe. This is a diamond shape and is referred to as a linear keyframe. These are the default keyframes created when you add effects to your layers initially, and these typically create a plain and direct movement. On a diagram, it appears like this. A linear keyframe, as described, creates a simple line of movement over time, where an object, in this example a circle, will move from point A to point B within a certain time frame at a constant speed with a rigid movement. So next we have what looks like an arrow shape pointing left. This keyframe is referred to as an ease out keyframe. This keyframe can be applied to add smoothness to the start of a sequence. On a diagram, it appears like this. An ease out keyframe creates a subtle delay in time at the start, where an object, in this example a circle, will move out from point A, starting slowly, then building momentum into point B within a certain time frame, though with a flowing movement. It's called ease out because it creates a subtle delay moving outwards from a keyframe. So next we have what looks like an arrow shape pointing right. This keyframe is referred to as an ease in keyframe. So this keyframe is the exact opposite of the previous. On a diagram, it appears like this. An ease in keyframe creates a subtle delay in time at the end, where an object, in this example a circle, will move out from point A, then decrease momentum into point B within a certain time frame, though with a flowing movement. It's called ease in because it creates subtle delay moving inwards to the keyframe. So next we have what looks like an hourglass shape. This keyframe can be applied to add smoothness in a sequence, and these typically create smooth momentum used between sequences. On a diagram, it appears like this. An easy ease keyframe creates subtle delay or movement over time instead of a constant speed. This tends to create a swing type movement, where an object, in this example a circle, will move from point A and appear to curve over point B, slowing down subtly, then swinging over to point C within a certain time frame, though with a flowing movement. So that's how these keyframes are working on my yo-yo animation. So I'll press spacebar to stop the animation preview, and now if I come into the timeline panel and look at the first yo-yo 1 layer, we can see that the keyframes applied to this are linear keyframes. These are the default keyframes that are applied initially as you begin to animate a sequence. Now if I carefully click the first keyframe for yo-yo, next I will hold shift, then click and drag to select the other 2 keyframes. Upon release, I will select them all and we can see they are highlighted in blue. Now, if I carefully come over to the left, at the top of the timeline panel above the layer names, we can see an icon here called the graph editor. Now, if I click this, where the layers once were, we can now see this visual diagram. What we are looking at here is the momentum of yo-yo 1 between each keyframe. Keep in mind that this is not the physical direction movement of the object in the composition panel above. Think of this as more of a momentum graph over time. The smoothness of position in this instance is represented here by this green line. Now notice how straight and rigid the line is. We can see that this diagram is matching the one we have under the first yo-yo. Now remember this. So I'll click back on the graph editor button to go back to my layers. So using linear keyframes creates a more direct animated appearance, where it goes from one point to another with a consistent speed with no smoothness or change in momentum. So this time, if we look at the second yo-yo 2 layer, we can see that the same linear keyframes are applied, but this time the middle keyframe is an hourglass shape. This is an easy ease keyframe. Now, if I carefully click on the first keyframe for yo-yo 2, next I will hold shift, then click and drag to select the other 2 keyframes. Upon release, I will select them all and we can see they are highlighted in blue. Now, if I carefully come over to the left, at the top of the timeline panel, and click the graph editor icon once again, what we are now looking at is the momentum of the yo-yo 2 shape between each keyframe. Notice this time, instead of the rigid line, there is a subtle curve in the middle. Now, we can see that this diagram is matching the one we have under the second yo-yo. So I'll click back on the graph editor button to go back to my layers. So using an easy ease keyframe in the middle creates a smooth swing animation in between the sequence. So next, let's look at the third yo-yo layer. This time we can see we have something quite different. The first keyframe is an arrow pointing left. This is an ease out keyframe. The second frame is an hourglass, an easy ease keyframe again, And the last keyframe is an arrow pointing right. This is an ease in keyframe. Now, if I carefully click the first keyframe for Yo-Yo 3, hold Shift and click and drag to select the other two keyframes, upon release, I will select them all, and we can see they're all highlighted in blue. Now, if I carefully come over to the left at the top of the timeline panel and click the graph editor icon again, what we are looking at now is the momentum of the Yo-Yo 3 shape between each keyframe. Notice this time we have the same curve at the top, but this time the lines curve more out at the beginning and at the end. So this line is more curvy. Now we can see that this diagram is matching the one we have under the third yo-yo. So I'll click back on the graph editor button to go back to my layers. So using an ease out keyframe at the start, an easy ease keyframe in the middle, and an ease in at the end, we get a really nice smooth animation throughout the sequence. So adding easing changes the momentum of an effect between keyframes. This, as a visual effect, adds smoothness to our sequences, and is something you will want to keep in mind and apply to your sequences as you animate and build your video presentations. Now in After Effects, applying easing is easy, so now I'm going to show you how. So to begin, we are going to need the animation project open we created in the previous episode. If you have yours ready, be sure to open it. Though if you do not, or you're joining the course for the first time, you can get this After Effects project in the downloadable folder to follow along. With the project folder open, click into the S2 Essential Practice folder, then into the 10th folder, Easing, and open the Easing After Effects file, and you will have the same document I have open here. So now we are ready to begin. So let's take a quick look at the current animation. So I'll make sure the time indicator is at the start of the timeline, and I'll press spacebar to activate preview. Right now we can see this is a very plain and direct animation, moving from left to right and scaling down quite plainly. Now if we look in the timeline panel, we can see the keyframes for our animation we set earlier. Looking at these, we can see they are all diamond shape. These are linear keyframes, which are the basic and plain keyframes which create consistent momentum. Now I want to add some dynamic to the animation. So to begin, I want us to concentrate on the position keyframes. So I'll press spacebar to stop the preview. And the first thing I'm going to do here is click the first position keyframe. With it selected, I'm going to right click on the mouse, then scroll down to Keyframe Assistance. Scroll across and select Ease Out. Upon click, we will now see the keyframe change shape from a diamond shape to the arrow pointing left. So just like that, I have added easing to my first keyframe. Now I used an ease out keyframe there because it is at the start of the sequence, and I want the circle to build up momentum gradually from the start of the sequence. So next I will click the second position keyframe. With it selected, I'm going to right click on the mouse, then scroll down to Keyframe Assistance, scroll across and select Easy Ease. Upon click, we will now see the keyframe change shape from a diamond shape to an hourglass shape. Now, I used an Easy Ease keyframe there because it is between the sequence, and I want the circle to smooth over the middle of the sequence. So next, I will click the third position keyframe. With it selected, I'm going to right click on the mouse, then scroll down to Keyframe Assistance, scroll across and select Ease In. Upon click, we will now see the keyframe change shape from a diamond shape to an arrow pointing right. Now I added an Easy In keyframe there because it is at the end of the sequence, and I want the circle to slow down momentum gradually into the end of the sequence. So with easing applied to my position keyframes, I'll make sure the time indicator is at the start of the timeline, and I'll press spacebar to activate preview. So now we can see there is a nice smooth transition from point A to point B and back again. Instead of the abrupt and robotic movement at each point, we now have a nice smooth swing-like sequence. Now if I carefully click the first keyframe for position, next I will hold Shift, then click and drag to select the other two keyframes. With them selected, I can carefully come over to the left at the top of the timeline panel and click the graph editor icon again. And this is the effect the easing is having on the keyframes. So at the start, we applied the ease out keyframe. This is creating this nice curve out like so. Then at the middle, we applied the easy ease. This is creating this nice smooth curve at the top. Then at the end, we applied the ease in. That is creating this nice curve in like so. So I'll make sure the time indicator is at the start of the timeline and I'll press spacebar to activate preview. Now we can watch and compare the momentum of the animation above over time with the momentum curve here in the graph editor. So we can see the circle slowly moves out, then gathers momentum to point B, then towards the curve it slows down over point B. Over the curve it starts to build momentum in a swing action back to point A, and as it approaches point A it decreases momentum slowly. Now because the starting point is the same as the end point, this appears to be an infinite animation. Now in this graph editor here, if we were to link this together, it would look like a wave, as the ease out on the left would join the ease in on the right infinitely. So I'll click back on the graph editor button to go back to my layers. So next I want to concentrate on the scale keyframes. So if I press spacebar to stop the preview, the first thing I'm going to do here is click the first scale keyframe. With it selected, I'm going to right click on the mouse, then scroll down to keyframe assistance, scroll across and select ease out. Upon click, we will now see the keyframe change shape from a diamond shape to the arrow pointing left. So next, I will click the second scale keyframe. With it selected, I'm going to right click on the mouse, then scroll down to keyframe assistance, scroll across and select easy ease. Upon click, we will now see the keyframe change shape from a diamond shape to an hourglass shape. Next, I will click the third scale keyframe. With it selected, I'm going to right click on the mouse, then scroll to keyframe assistance, scroll across and select easy ease again. Upon click, we will now see the keyframe change shape from a diamond shape to an hourglass shape again. Next, I will click the fourth scale keyframe. With it selected, I'm going to right click on the mouse, then scroll down to keyframe assistance, scroll across and select easy ease. Upon click, we will now see the keyframe change shape from a diamond shape to the hourglass shape again. Lastly, I will click the fifth scale keyframe. With it selected, I'm going to right click on the mouse, then scroll down to keyframe assistance, scroll across and select ease in. Upon click, we will now see the keyframe change shape from a diamond shape to the arrow pointing right. So with easing applied to my scale keyframes, I'll make sure the time indicator is at the start of the timeline and I'll press spacebar to activate preview. So now we can see there is a nice smooth scale transition applied to the sequence. Much nicer. Now if I carefully click the first keyframe for scale, next I will hold shift then click and drag to select the other four keyframes. With them selected, I can carefully come over to the left at the top of the timeline panel and click the graph editor icon again. What we are now looking at is the momentum of the scale between each keyframe. So now we can see something a little more interesting than the first example. At the start, we applied an ease out keyframe. At the end, we applied an ease in keyframe. And all through the middle, we applied the easy ease keyframes. So see the effect it has here. It has created this nice curved line. So I'll make sure the time indicator is at the start of the timeline and I'll press spacebar to activate preview. So just like the smooth momentum of the positioning, we now have smooth momentum for scale. So I'll click back on the graph editor button to go back to the layers. And the last effect we have applied is opacity. Now opacity in this instance is a very subtle effect. We could add easing to the keyframes, but in this instance it would not have any obvious effect. If I preview the animation, it appears to work as I wish. So in this instance, I'm just going to leave the keyframe set to linear. So that is an introduction to easing and how easing is applied to keyframes in After Effects. As we progress on this course, we are going to be animating more and more, expanding on the principles we have learned in this video, and adding easing to create more complex and dynamic effects. So once you are happy with your animation, come up to File, scroll down and select Save As. What we will do here is save a new version of the After Effects document. Now, I'm going to save this in the folder here in the project folder. You can save this wherever you wish, but make sure you remember where it is as we will be using this in the next episode. Here I'll save this as Easing Lesson Project and click OK. Perfect. So to recap, some key things to remember are adding easing changes the momentum of an effect at the start, end or between keyframes. As a visual effect, keying adds smoothness to our sequences, and this adds a more dynamic and smooth aesthetic to our sequences.
So over the last few episodes, we have learnt about animation principles, and now we know how to create simple animations. Now, one of the main factors when creating video sequences is time. Now, we use the timeline to set our keyframes to animate and edit our video to create a video presentation to specific times. As you start to build in After Effects, there are going to be various occasions where you will want to customize the time it takes for an effect to happen, the speed of an animation, or even the speed of a video. You may want to slow something down or speed something up. In the next video, I'm going to discuss a feature in After Effects called time stretching, and I'll also show you ways to control your keyframe animations to slow down or speed up your sequence. So see you in the next video.